Welcome back into the Rowdy Studio. I'm Stephen Levine. This is Tom Vanderboort. Heading to Atlanta, just one of 2 remaining races before we
cut to the chase, baby.
You've been waiting to say that all season.
I love saying that. It'd be nice if you guys in the studio could do a little reverb on it. Cut to the chase.
Cut to the chase. Like that.
No.
The thing about this particular racetrack is it is not one of Kyle Busch's strongest, despite the fact that he has a victory here. He only has 3 top 10s. Of course, all 3 of those were also top 5s. So it's feast or famine for Kyle Busch. He can't afford to have a bad race if he wants to make the chase.
Well, it comes down to winning at Richmond, I think, for Kyle Busch. I don't foresee him winning here, just based on Michigan. I don't foresee Denny Hamlin really winning here, even though he just won at Bristol, based on Michigan. To me, it comes down to the Roush cars and the Hendrick cars. And you look at Jimmy Johnson, you look at Jeff Gordon, you look at Junior. This is one of Junior's best downforce tracks, and Junior won at Michigan earlier this year, not the last time we were there. And, of course, Greg Biffle coming off the Michigan win. Matt Kenseth needs to bounce back. I think Tony Stewart will be right there. So I think it's the Roush cars, and I think it's the Hendrick cars. I don't really, and possibly Brad Keselowski in there a little bit.
What's interesting about Jeff Gordon at this particular racetrack, obviously he has 5 victories, but he has multiple victories at many racetracks. Of course, at a lot of those...
First Cup race was right here, too.
At a lot of those racetracks, you look at his record, and his victories came earlier in his career.
Yep.
Not so at Atlanta. He won this race last year. So Kyle Busch doesn't want to see Jeff Gordon and Carl Edwards have strong performances in Atlanta. He certainly doesn't want to see them win at Atlanta, yet those are 2 guys very capable of victory.
If you look at the wild card race and you look at where these guys are going to win or possibly going to win, Carl Edwards and Jeff Gordon, whether they acknowledge it or not, have to be pointing to this racetrack.
It's a must win.
And saying, this is where I'm going to win. Now, obviously, if you don't win, you go to Richmond, then, you know, you got to go for it there. But if we're looking at these 2 races, this is the one for those guys. For Kyle Busch, it's definitely Richmond. To me, it's definitely Richmond, which is not to say something weird couldn't happen.
But he can't have a bad race, a wreck at Atlanta and win at Richmond. He can't afford that either.
Well, I think that's the issue that's difficult, because the points could still come into play. Because if Jeff wins here and Kyle wins at Richmond, then the points come back into play. So I think you've got to keep all that in mind, no matter who you are.
All right, let's talk about the racetrack a little bit. I mean, this is a track drivers tend to like because although it's fast and it's a downforce track, it's got multiple grooves. You can run from the top to the bottom. Drivers feel like they can take things into their own hands at this track in a way they can't perhaps at some of the other downforce tracks.
Yeah, you know, you can basically look for the groove and the place on the racetrack where your car runs the fastest. And at some tracks, there's only one fast way around, so looking to the high line, if it's the low line, ain't going to do you much good. Here at Atlanta, top to bottom, you can run pretty much anywhere on the racetrack and go fast. It's just, what is your car like? You can even change the way you drive into the corner, you know, so it's not just the line on the track, but how you enter and exit the corner. You can kind of change that as a driver too. So guys will have a lot of options. What we used to see here is we used to see guys that would be maybe slower at the beginning of a run and their car would change quite a bit and maybe be faster at the end of the run. That's something to keep in mind. And also when you have a wide racetrack like this, fuel mileage can come into play, because guys can stay away from each other and avoid each other. And so unlike Bristol last week, you might see a lot more long green flag runs, and fuel mileage, pit strategy, all those things could be really critical.
And we saw at Bristol just last week Carl Edwards try to steal one with fuel strategy. Now, it didn't quite work. He didn't quite have enough, and he used his stuff up early. But if he's not running in the top 5 just based on his car, you might see him try to employ fuel strategy to grab a win. It's desperation time. Marcus Ambrose is another guy who might be able to employ fuel strategy or pit strategy to try to steal a win here at this track.
Absolutely. And the flip side of that is, let's say you have a race-winning car. Well, you still have to keep all those strategy considerations in mind, because you don't want to get outfoxed by someone who's slower than you.
Outfoxed by somebody who's foxier.
Well, that's right. So you have to be careful. You don't want to get that win taken away because you were too conservative. And so that's a really tough thing for the crew chiefs.
Yeah, so who do you like in this race? Who's your pick?
I tell you, I like the Hendrick cars. You saw what happened to Jimmy at Michigan. I think he bounces back. Atlanta's, you know, he's got so many tracks that he's good on. It's one of the best. I like Jimmy.
Yeah?
Jimmy taking a win and taking 4 into the chase.
You know, I think we'll see a different Carl Edwards than we have seen up to this point in the season, because I mean, it's time to step up. But I am going to go with Jeff Gordon. Look, it's Jeff Gordon, man. And yes, he has not looked terribly fast this season, but it's do or die time. The guy is a champion.
Wait, hey, look, they call him Big Daddy for a reason.
Do they call him Big Daddy?
And it's not because he's big.
And it's not, but it isn't because
He
he's
is
a daddy?
and I think they might have called him Big Daddy before he was a daddy, too.
Really?
So it might have to do with the prowess behind the wheel.
All right, for Tom Vandervoort, I'm Stephen Levine. Thanks for watching.